Hello again, everyone. This is Mike Peden with another episode of what I'm now calling Peden's Journal. I used to call this series Mr. Peden's Vlog, but after some self-reflection and changes YouTube has made with their titling, I figured this would be a little less clunky, convoluted, and a little more catchy. I want to talk to you today about some observations I've made with autism, and it is particularly relating to media exposure. As you may be aware, I have produced 4 episodes of my autism documentary series, and last month WCCO television, Channel 4, aired a week-long series on autism. The first story reported on 2 teenagers and how life was like for them, what their parents were going through, and some hopes, fears, concerns that both teenagers and parents had. The second story reported on 2 autistic adults and how they were adapting in the workplace, what they did, and just the struggles they've had to deal with trying to adapt to a neurotypical world. If you're not familiar what that means, neurotypical is just what some people refer to as humans who do not have any mental disability. Therefore, I am not one of them. The third story was a reality check done by Pat Kessler, WCCO's political reporter, and he looked into the myths of autism, particularly dealing with the comments that Michael Savage made. If you don't know what I'm talking about, Savage is a conservative commentator, and on his radio show in one episode he said an autistic kid 99% of the time is a brat that needs to cut the act out, and I'm just paraphrasing him. I don't have the quote word for word on me. The fourth story in the series looked at the autism diet. If you don't know what I'm talking about, recently parents and other people have been trying this gluten and dairy-free diet, and they believe that it's helping their children. There isn't any documentation to suggest that it is working. All the evidence so far is anecdotal, but it was looking at a different aspect of how autism is being treated, because there's no cure and there's no cause. And the last story really interested me. It looked into autism and the Somali community. There were actually 2 articles done on this, one from CCO and then one from MinnPost. MinnPost beat CCO to it in terms of publication, although it's hard to say who got the idea first, and I wouldn't have known that MinnPost did an article on the very same thing if a coworker didn't send me a link to the story, so I'd like to thank him for that. But that really got my attention because it promoted the idea, that autism has no discrimination. It doesn't discriminate against anyone. It can affect anyone at any time. It has no face, even though boys are more likely to get it than girls. It has no social or ethnic boundaries. And up until that point, all the stories I had seen on autism from the Twin Cities television stations were either one-time deals where they reported on a child and maybe interviewed their mother or maybe their father, and just going through the struggles, strengths, etc., etc. But they were all Caucasian. And this was the first time that a mainstream audience was able to watch a story on autism spectrum disorder and understand that it is not just a white person's problem. It's not any person. It's not any particular person's problem. It's everyone's problem. And by 2016, I've heard there are going to be 1.5 million adults out there living with autism, and they're going to and everyone's going to be dealing with it in some way, shape, or form. We hear about how many people are being diagnosed now. The series that WCCO produced compared to my own, mirrored my series in a couple ways, particularly the first two stories. After that, they branched out. But the first story, where they looked at a couple teenagers and what they were going through, was similar to the first episode when I interviewed myself. And how I pulled that off was I wrote the questions ahead of time, and then I had someone else ask them, and then I didn't bother to prepare any of my answers. But at the time, I was a teenager when I started the project. And then the second episode, I interviewed an autistic adult, although he had Tourette syndrome, so there were some other things going on. And outside of the voiceovers that are almost required for a broadcast journalism piece, they were really alike. They were very much alike. Then after that, it branched out into some topics that I haven't covered yet, even though I plan to continue the series. The savage comments, I like that they looked into the myths and what is going on, and WCCO was frank in informing their viewers that it is autistic kids are not brats, they have a problem, and it's growing. But I don't address the controversies in my series, and I don't do it because I just don't feel it's going to help the audience out there. While it might answer some questions, it's already too late for people who are affected by autism. I don't see a cure anytime in the near future, so it's just going to be something that they'll have to deal with for the rest of their life, and having to worry about the controversies and the questions of what autism is, what's causing it, and are these people brats, etc., isn't going to help down the road. The autism diet I wanted to talk about, and I actually did, although I lost that interview, so I'm going to have to revisit it at a later time. The Somali article really opened up my eyes, because I've been trying to mix it up a little bit with the autism series to kind of promote the idea that anyone can be affected by it. Overall, I thought WCCO did a really good job in covering a number of different topics, and one thing I would have liked to have seen them done, and just because I already did this in my series, is what people are doing to help promote autism awareness. I'll talk about that a little more in my next blog, but you didn't hear anything about fundraisers or events that were designed to help people to benefit people who are affected by autism. I don't know why that is. Again, it's just an observation I made. I think the reasoning behind it, and I didn't talk to WCCO, this is just a guess, is they were trying to inform a mainstream audience about something they probably didn't know much about. Despite the media exposure autism has had in the last couple years, I still get questions about development, about what it is, etc., etc. And the series hasn't helped as much as I thought it would. So I think what they were going for was just to bring people into it and get them to give them as much information as they could in a week, because their belief is that sooner or later one of those viewers will find out that they're affected by autism in some way, whether it's their own children, if it's a niece, nephew, cousin, brother. And I thought it was well done, and I hope they revisit it sometime in the future. That will do it for this edition of Peden's Journal. I will return with some thoughts on why the vaccine theory has been promoted and why the controversies from yesteryear still exist. Until next time, so long.